Your mind is like this water, my friend. When it is agitated, it becomes difficult to see. But if you allow it to settle, the answer becomes clear.
Hi everyone, welcome to Host No More, helping you weed out your psychic parasites. Don't forget to click subscribe if you want to hear more about understanding narcissism and how to deal with the abuse. Be sure to also hit the like button and share this video if you find it helpful. So now let's dive into today's topic. So first I'll be talking about how to expand our range of choices when we are responding to a crisis or a narcissistic abuse. Here I'll touch on how we can become aware of the missing frames between stimuli and response. Then in part 2, I'll be discussing the 3 types of responses when we are facing a narcissist and how they can be pointless or effective depending on the scenario or circumstance. You can find part 2 in my Patreon page, which I will attach in the description below. So before I start with my first point, I need to share an important quote from Viktor Frankl, who is a psychologist and Holocaust survivor. So he said that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and freedom. So each time before we respond to a stimulus, there are many micro reactions and also possible micro stimulus or supporting stimulus that our consciousness skip through. For example, before we react to the abuse, we could fail to notice the chain of thoughts and feelings leading up to the response, the neurochemical changes in our brain, and the physical twitching, stiffening, or clenching of muscles in certain areas of the body. In other words, our awareness is not strong enough to pick up what happened in the space between stimulus and response, and as a result, we become impulsive. We can look at our mind as the camera and our consciousness as its memory card. The camera's performance depends on its frame rate. So like the camera, our ability to detect the chain of events or the layers of interface between stimulus and response will affect what choices we have in the matter. If we have developed a strong awareness of these frames, we'll be able to gain access to a wide range of choices in responding to a narcissistic abuse or any crisis. And this can include very subtle responses. So to acquire this strong awareness, we need to expand our mindfulness. I will now go through the steps we can take to improve our mindfulness and see progress in the way we respond to adversity. So when we have made a bad decision, we have a tendency to either push it away entirely through other stimulations or to get absorbed in guilt or regret. If we do this, we'll get trapped in a cycle, keep repeating the same mistakes, and stay impulsive. It can also take a toll on us as the stress accumulates. That is why we need to address the bad decision so that we can come to terms with it and learn from it. There are a few important points we need to note when we are doing this. Firstly, we need to know when to address the mistake. We also need to know how to address it and when to let things go. It is very important to address our bad choices at the right time. An example of a bad choice is when we participate in the mind games of a narcissist or when we stay engaged with them when we don't have to. In this case, if they continue to manipulate or abuse us, we need to put aside our emotional turmoil resulting from the bad decision for the moment so that we can deal with or leave the current situation effectively and make it a point to address our poor decision at a later time. The first step in addressing our mistake is to lean into the result of our response without identifying with it and making it define who we are, or rejecting it completely without examining what we did wrong or how we can do better the next time. When we have made a bad decision, we are often deterred by the emotional outcome. This is because the emotion or the color is so striking that we can't face it without being overwhelmed by it and getting triggered into a spiral of emotional distress where our traumas keep growing and escalating until we are left with nothing but pain and misery. That is why we avoid facing it. So what we can do is we can adopt the colorless method, which is simply reminding ourselves not to cling to these emotions when addressing the mistake. We need to tell ourselves that it is just a stimuli and just a response, that it is okay to make bad choices, that there is nothing wrong with me, because this is simply where I'm at right now in my journey towards inner peace. It is simply a fact that I'm still in the phase where I'm triggered or distressed by such a stimulus, that I'm still responding in the wrong way. We have to accept the reality of our current state of mind and emotional weaknesses. And we have to remind ourselves that by leaning into the outcome of our response, we are giving ourselves the opportunity to grow out of the negative energy, to learn from our response, and to edge slowly and slowly towards a clearer mind, better self-control, and better decision-making. Once we are able to sit in our emotional turmoil without panicking or spiraling, once we are able to stay still amidst chaos, we can proceed to examine our response and the space between the stimulus and our response. When we are observing a past incident from stimulus up to the response, we have a tendency to focus only on select frames or occurrences between stimulus and the response. This is because we believe that our mistakes lie only in these frames, that these frames hold the key to solve our problems. We believe that the rest of the story, the other details, are not important. The other thoughts, feelings that come up, the other minor, small physical reactions are irrelevant. Here, our motivation is to solve the problem so that we don't have to suffer in the future, so that we will make better decisions the next time we face a narcissist. Now, this is a good motivation to have, but sometimes it can be counterproductive or lead us to derive solutions that are either short-term or not very effective. We need to shift our motivation towards self-recognition, better self-awareness, and stronger mindfulness. This allows us to place equal significance on every part of the story, from stimulus up to the response. Every frame in the recording matters. Don't skip through anything. And only with the full story can the root cause of the mistake be pinpointed and identified. With this motivation and a sense of curiosity, we are better equipped to investigate the incident and how we come to respond in that way. We need to analyze the incident thoroughly and ask ourselves, what is my response trying to show me? What else led me to respond in that way? What am I hiding from myself? Is there something I could be denying about myself? Is there something I could be missing in the chain of thoughts, perception, feelings, or any subtle physical reactions leading up to that response? For example, I sometimes self-sabotage and find myself inviting or encouraging the narcissistic abuse. Upon inspection, I found that I had issues with trusting myself. I did not trust that I was able to remain calm in a crisis. I didn't trust that I could remain dignified around shameful, inappropriate, wild behavior. I didn't trust that I could remain gentle and peaceful around aggression and violence. And I didn't trust that I could stand my ground. This helped me realize my weakness so that I can take small steps to overcome it. I started encouraging myself through positive self-talk each time I face a crisis. I would repeat simple phrases like "I can get through this" or "I have a strong mind." So you can see that from the critical analysis of the incident where I responded poorly, I was able to unlock what I need to do when I'm faced with similar situations in the future to avoid self-sabotage. But more importantly, I was able to understand myself better and solve a core issue that I've been neglecting for a long time. Another example is that I become more willing to enable abuse whenever I'm being flattered. Upon reflection, I discovered that it was my strong neediness for attention that made me open myself to attack. So here, the issue is my own vanity. So it is never really about preventing the abuse, but rather about developing our own self-awareness and awareness of the gap between the stimulus and the response. So now I'm going to explain how our range of available options in responding to a stimulus becomes broader with better awareness. When our mindfulness is strong enough, we will be able to observe the stimulus as it arises, peaks, and fades away, and all of its accompanying effects, as well as the ripples of its influence. This allows us to slow down our response and notice the many choices available to us in the moment. We'll also be able to predict accurately how each choice is going to pan out. Then we can choose the best response. With great mindfulness, we can also become aware of how things are constantly changing with time, how new choices will randomly start to appear, and existing ones randomly start to disappear. And even if we make a wrong choice, with strong mindfulness, we'll be able to calmly address it in real time, understand its origin, learn from it, and move on quickly. The last point I want to touch on is when we need to let go of an incident where we reacted poorly. In addressing our mistake, if the emotional trigger or trauma gets too much, we need to put it aside and come back to it later once we feel calmer and more settled or prepared. If you still find it too challenging, then you'll have to let it go. There will be other opportunities to study ourselves. We will do better next time. Just know that we tried to face it, and that alone pushes us closer towards this process of self-recognition. And I assure you that in no time you'll be able to confront your mistakes, accept them, and learn from them without being consumed by fear, shame, or remorse. So I hope that helps. Don't forget to check out part 2 of this video, where I'll be dissecting the 3 different types of response when facing a narcissistic abuse. You can find part 2 in my Patreon page, Host No More. I will attach the link in the description below. Like and subscribe if you want to see more videos, and I wish you a smooth journey towards inner peace and wisdom. Bye!